There is a moment in every life that quietly divides the time before from the time after. For young Shankara, that moment came on the bank of a river, in the company of a man whose name the tradition has carried for more than 1,000 years. The man was Govinda Bhagavat, and he was a teacher of the deepest kind, one who had himself learned the way of non-duality from his own master before him. To meet him, the boy had walked far from the warm coast of Kerala, following an inner pull he could not quite explain even to himself. The story tells us that Govinda was sitting in a cave near the Narmada, one of the great rivers of central India, absorbed in deep meditation. When the young seeker arrived and offered his respects, the teacher is said to have asked a simple question, the question that opens every true spiritual life. He asked, in effect, "Who are you?" And the answer the boy gave was not a name, not a village, not a family line. He answered from the place that all his later teaching would point toward. He said that he was not the body, not the senses, not the restless mind, but the pure awareness that lay beneath them all, untouched and ever free. We do not need to take every detail of these old accounts as exact history. They were written down long after the events, and they carry the loving exaggeration of devotion. But they preserve something real, a flavor of truth that history alone cannot give. They tell us that here, at last, the teaching met the one who could receive it whole. Govinda recognized in this slender young man a vessel rare enough to hold the highest knowledge without spilling it, and he accepted him as a disciple. What followed was the long, patient work that no story can fully show. The discipline of a student in that world was total. He served his teacher, he listened, he questioned, he sat in silence, and slowly the great texts of the tradition were poured into him. He absorbed the Upanishads, those ancient hymns of insight that close the body of the Vedas. He took in the Brahma Sutras, the terse statements that try to gather the whole vision into a few lines. He learned the Bhagavad Gita not as poetry only, but as a map of the inner life. And above all, he was given the central key, the teaching of Advaita, which says that there is finally only one reality, and that the self within and the ground of all being are not two things but one. It is worth pausing on what that word, non-duality, really means, because it is easy to hear it and miss it. Most of us live inside a quiet, constant assumption that there is me here and the world there, a seer and a thing seen, a small self looking out at a vast and separate universe. Advaita does not ask us to deny the world. It asks us to look more closely at the line we have drawn down the middle of everything, the line between subject and object, and to discover that this line is not where we thought it was, and in the deepest sense is not there at all. Govinda, the tradition says, also asked the young man to take up the formal life of renunciation, to become a monk who owns nothing and belongs nowhere, so that nothing outward could pull him from the inner search. This was the vow that changed everything. From that day, Shankara walked as one who had set down the ordinary load of the world, not out of coldness toward life, but out of a fierce love for the one thing he had glimpsed. The promise he had made years before, by another riverbank, to leave home and seek the truth, was now sealed and made whole. There is a tender detail that the tellers of this life never leave out. Shankara had a mother and he loved her, and when he had left her, he had promised that he would return to her at the hour of her death, monk or not, custom or not. He would keep that promise. Even the highest knowledge in his life did not cancel the ordinary debts of the heart. This is part of why the story still moves us. The man who taught that the self is boundless and free did not float above human love. He carried it. And so the teaching that had begun as a longing in a child became, on that riverbank, a living inheritance passed from one awakened mind to another. This is the thread worth holding as we go further. Truth, in this tradition, is not invented and not merely thought out alone in a room. It is received, hand to hand, heart to heart, in the meeting of a ready student and a true teacher, and then it is tested in silence until it is no longer borrowed but known. In the next chapter, We will follow Shankara out of the teacher's cave and into the wide world, into the years of his maturity, when the disciple became the teacher, when the words began to flow into the great commentaries, and when the disciples gathered who would carry his light far beyond the span of his own short and astonishing life.